In the last one, we looked at the definition of restorative justice and landed on our own. In this video, I want to talk about how restorative justice is different from punitive justice, and I sort of alluded to that in the last one as well. Specifically, we're going to be looking at the values, practices, and systems associated with each, and hopefully by the end of it, you feel like you have the knowledge and skills to be able to point out each one in the wild when you see them, and maybe even shift your brain a little bit away from the punitive mindset you probably grew up with and into a more restorative one. The first thing to note about punitive justice is the name, punitive. Punitive comes from the word punishment, so we know punishment is pretty important to punitive justice. You might also hear me call it retributive justice. Same idea comes from the word retribution, which means revenge. In the same way, restorative justice, the word restorative, comes from restore, which means to heal. So we know healing is pretty important to restorative justice. So we can look at each as a means of responding to harm that centers different things. For punitive or retributive justice, it's punishment or revenge. And for restorative justice, it's healing. We can see a system of punitive justice play out pretty clearly in the US criminal justice system. The way that system works is a law basically says you cannot do this thing, and then it says what happens to you if you do that thing. Because of this, the court system is all about finding the facts of a case. Namely, the fact, did you break this law or not? So, if you are found guilty of committing a crime, the law states what should happen to you, what sort of punishment should happen. This is what's called a fixed outcome. Fixed outcomes are, if I can put it plainly, stupid. They're stupid anyway if your goal is for people to be happy, healthy, and free. But if your goal is to lock people up and hurt them for being different, I guess, then fixed outcomes are pretty much perfect, actually. The thing is, people are going to do the things you tell them not to do. It's just kind of how people are. It's not even about defiance or standing up to the system. It's just about people. People are imperfect and irrational, and they do things that hurt themselves, hurt each other, not because they necessarily want to, but because that's just how they work. And that's how they've always worked. If people were better than the way they've ever been, then honestly, a system of these fixed outcomes and thou shalt nots would be perfect. It would be a utopia. But it just doesn't work like that. But if you know all that already and you just want to hurt people you don't like, then you can make anything illegal that you want. You can make it illegal to be black. You can make it illegal to be gay. You can make it illegal to be poor. You could make it illegal to be anything or say anything that you disagree with. And once you've made those things illegal, anybody who fits even vaguely into those boxes, you can punish them however you see fit. And in the eyes of the law, you're perfectly justified in doing so. Many have made this observation before me, and many of those people have suggested that this means we should have no laws at all, anarchy. I think that's a reasonable response, but it's not one I agree with. Maybe I'm too optimistic, but I think a restorative system is a better replacement for the punitive system than no system at all. But that raises the question, what would a restorative system look like? The best way to tell a restorative system from a punitive system is to look at the sorts of questions they ask. In a punitive system, the questions are usually things like, what did this person do? What do they deserve? In a restorative system, the questions are more along the lines of, who was harmed? What do they need? And whose obligation is it to fill those needs? In a restorative system, the central focus is on meeting people's needs, especially the victims, and giving the offender the opportunity to take accountability and responsibility for the harm they caused. I've been talking a lot about larger systems, but this all applies to our personal lives as well. When someone causes you harm, you don't need to seek revenge. Instead, you can ask yourself questions like, What do I need to feel better? What do I need to mend this relationship? Sometimes it's as simple as needing the person who harmed you to acknowledge what they did, apologize, and do better. Sometimes it's a little more complicated than that, and the relationship doesn't survive the harm. And that can really suck. But at the end of the day, the important thing is that everybody's needs are met. And when you cause harm, because you will, it's kind of hard sometimes to face up to that. It's so easy to deflect and avoid. But if you want to be restorative, you first have to accept the fact that you aren't perfect and you're going to hurt people. Sometimes. Probably don't hurt people all the time. That's not very restorative of you, but you're going to do it sometimes. So, when that happens, the restorative thing to do is to take accountability and responsibility for trying to repair that harm. Accountability can be a tricky thing for anyone when they cause harm, but the way I see it, accountability is an opportunity. When you've caused harm, you have the opportunity to repair it and rebuild that trust in that relationship. If you don't take that opportunity, then you're basically telling that person that the relationship doesn't matter to you, that their feelings don't matter. So try your best to reframe in your mind accountability as an opportunity and not as a punishment. Let's recap. Restorative justice is all about healing relationships, needs, and building context so you can create responses to harm that actually repair the harm. Punitive justice, on the other hand, is all about punishment and thou shalt not rules and low context responses to harm that don't solve a problem so much as they cause more harm. And I think that about covers it, folks. A nice quick video. The way our culture normalizes punitive justice and punishment in general is incredibly harmful to people, relationships, communities. And so I encourage you to critically examine this programming you've received. When you look at the systems you've been born into with a critical eye, you start to see the holes in them and you start to see where they just sort of fall flat. They don't meet the needs of people so much as they meet the needs of a system. And I guess that's it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.